Theiss Soundshot. Insights and analysis from one of the leading law firms in Central, Eastern and Southeastern Europe.
Welcome to a new Soundshot episode. This is Theiss Asian Desk, and in this episode we would like to introduce to you our expansion from a mere China desk to an Asian desk, so we would really cover East Asia, and we have with us as a new joiner Wha. Why don't you introduce yourself with a few words?
Yeah, hi, my name is Wha Lee and I recently joined Theiss corporate and M&A team. Originally I'm from South Korea, I was born there, but when I was 10 I moved to Austria, and since then I've been living and also studying and now currently working in Austria. And I am glad to be part of the Asian desk team.
Yeah, we have also Angela. For those of you who don't know Angela, maybe Angela, you also would like to introduce yourself.
Hi everybody, my name is Angela. I am a member with Theiss Asian Desk and also a lawyer in our firm's banking and finance team.
Yeah, and I'm Christian Mikosch from our corporate team. And in this episode we would like to explore a little bit Korea and China and the relationship Korea has with the rest of Asia. And we also would like to focus on names. For us, names was one of the most important things. It took us a long time to develop the Chinese name for Theiss. That was quite a thing, and also to give myself a Chinese name. These things are very important, and we would like to understand, Wha, how is that working in Korea? Do Korean people also, like Chinese people, give themselves Western names? Is this something in Korea as well?
You mean the persons?
Yes.
or the entities?
Persons and entities.
Okay, as for the persons, usually I think the trend of giving European or Western names in general has been developed over the past few years, since the business development towards Western countries has been expanding a lot in the past decades. So, and also for Korean names, it's a little bit difficult to pronounce for Western people. So many people tend to give themselves Western names, such as Alex, which is really easy to pronounce. Nowadays, I think many people also register their Western names to the official documents as well.
Wow. Oh, I didn't know that. Is this the same in China? I mean, we know that in China, Chinese people who tend to work with the West, most of them have English names.
Exactly.
What is your Chinese name, actually?
So I have a Chinese name, which is not the official one, but the Chinese name is the one my parents call me at home, which is Liu Yang. So my last name is Liu, and in China last name comes first. So it's consisting of those two words, Liu Yang.
Yeah, so many of you we will not know that, and Angela is, that's kind of a normal name, but in our travels through China we came across quite outstanding names, like one of my favorites is Maserati. Then we know one of our friends is Riddle. He called themselves after a Batman figure, and it's always cool to have a Western name. But is it also that you have the Western name in the official documents in China?
Not that I've seen, no. It's only, for colleagues in the workspace primarily, and also among friends. If people tend to, study abroad in United States or United Kingdom, then those people come back and give themselves these Western names.
How is it that in Korea? Is it similar?
I think in Korea the trend in education has switched over the past years. So children start learning English in a very early stages, and in this stage they're giving themselves English names so that it's easier to communicate, and it's also more natural to speak in English with Western names. So they start giving themselves English names partly already in kindergarten or in elementary school.
Can you change that name afterwards?
As long as it's not anything official, so it's only called in a private manner, so it won't be any
Yeah,
problems to switch.
because you know the name I would have given myself in kindergarten is not the name I would want now actually. And another thing is we had a friend of mine also from South Korea. She changed her name. Is this a thing in South Korea that you can change even your Korean name?
I think it's also very similar to Austria. You can also change your Austrian name.
But it's not common.
If you have valid grounds. So
Yeah.
you have actually, I have a friend of mine. He changed his first and his last name, even though he's Austrian.
Oh, okay. So that's something extraordinary. Now, coming from persons, let's go to entity. One of the takeaways we had with China was the wonder we had about Chinese law firm names. You know, we had firms like Grandal, who were friends of us in the Intellects program, who nobody really knows in China by their English name. Yeah? Same for King and Wood, Jansen Bridge, and so on and so forth. Angela, can you just enlighten us why also law firms have English names and Chinese names?
I think the main point is to grab the attention of Chinese-speaking people. If you present yourself, your name with Chinese characters as well, because Western names tend to be hard to pronounce, especially to pronounce them the uniform way. Many Western brands, law firms also give themselves Chinese names for the Chinese market.
Like Theiss, yeah, we did the same.
Like Theiss,
what
yes.
is our Chinese name?
So we went for the phonetic translation of our firm's name, which is Theiss, and in Chinese it would be Theiss.
Theiss. And we also found a very nice sign, some very nice letters which have a positive connotation, which is also very important. And for those of you who have not seen our presentation on that topic, a short recap, we tried many names because we wanted to start with a name which is not a phonetic translation, but which has some very nice meaning. And there was one we had which sounded like 1,000 blooming roses.
I think it was Wansen, the first one we had,
Yeah, but then a senior associate of our firm, and I won't mention names, said it sounded like a toilet spray. So we abandoned that. Then we also went to China. We asked the people, what do you think about this name or that name? And the feedback we got is, yeah, it sounds nice, but it sounds like you're trying too hard. And that's why we switched back to a phonetic translation of Theiss. Yeah. So enough about us. How is it in Korea? What is the naming convention for Korean law firms?
Well, in Korea, they also have their Korean names, but usually they also have Western names.
For example?
For example, one of the biggest law firm in Korea is Gwangjang, and for the English name, they're Lee and Co.
Oh, I thought Lee and Co. was the Korean version.
No. Also, there's, for example, Taepyeongyang, and for the English name, they're Bae, Kim, and Lee.
We didn't know that.
Well, of course, there are some law firms who don't even have an English name or a distinctive English name or a distinctive Korean name. For example,
Yipyeong? That's a Korean name, isn't it?
Yeah, of course. There are some law firms who maintains their Korean name, but there are also law firms who doesn't even have a Korean designated Korean name. For example, Kim and Jang. They're also called in Korea Kim and Jang.
Okay.
Right?
But Kim and Lee is the English version.
Yeah, that is, for example, the Lee and Co. is an English version because they follow the American tradition. Because traditionally, the majority of American law firms had their founding members in their names. So, as for the Korean law firms, they also follow this tradition when they consider naming them for the European
westernized
to the Western market.
And the Korean name, it means what?
For example, Taepyeongyang is the ocean, is the Atlantic Ocean.
Cool. So you know, my law firm is called Ocean. Oh, so a little bit nicer than. Oh, we didn't know that. Wow. Because you know, Kim and Lee sounds like a very Korean thing.
Yeah, but as for the Western law firms who are settling down in the Korean market, they usually maintain the Western names, and also as long as they're not partnering up with existing Korean law firms. So if Theiss would establish in Korea an office, it would be just Theiss. Right.
That's very interesting. And do Western expats give themselves Korean names?
They usually don't.
They don't, yeah. It's just not what you do. Yeah. Because in China, how is it there? Do you give yourself as an expat a Chinese name?
Yes, in China, expats typically do give themselves a Chinese name, which is interesting because in the office you would have the Chinese people giving themselves Western names, whereas the expats working there would give themselves a Chinese name as well. And you would translate either have a phonetic translation or a translation with some more meaning, beautiful characters.
Yeah, and I have to thank Angela because Angela gave me my Chinese name, which is Mikosch.
Yes, exactly.
And the sign says something about, progress through science or something like that.
Yes, it's confidential science.
Confidential science, yeah. Secret
And
science.
yeah, secret science.
So I have actually a Chinese name. I don't use it very often. Angela and I never use it. But when I'm in China, I can, at least say that I have a Chinese name. Yeah.
Exactly.
So that's quite an interesting difference.
But I think one of the biggest differences is that the language itself between Chinese and Korean, because as far as I know, in Chinese, all the letters have certain meanings.
Mm-hmm.
In contrast to Korean, which is just very similar to alphabet, so it's just phonetic, and the letter itself doesn't have any special meaning. So.
We talked earlier about the history of Chinese language in Korea. This was very interesting. Maybe you can also dive a little bit deeper into the Chinese roots of the Korean language, or vice versa.
In a very earlier stage of Korean history, the Korean people were using Chinese letters, but it turned out to be very difficult to read for the normal population. So in the course of the history, Korea developed an own alphabet to facilitate the understanding of the normal population, what government or what the authority was going to announce or tell.
And how is that? Is that also reflected in legal texts, this kind of history?
Not only in a legal context, but in the earlier times, if you read some newspaper, so many Korean words have still their roots in the Chinese. So to avoid any confusion, they used to write the corresponding Chinese letters next to the Korean word. The trend is that they try to simplify everything, the text as well, so they don't use the Chinese letters that much anymore.
So for the Koreans, Chinese language is a little bit like the Latin for us in certain texts, so that you have in brackets sort of like the Latin expression. Almost.
Yeah, exactly. We're talking about the Chinese letters in the traditional form, not in the simplified form, but we still learn them a lot in school as well. At least I did when I was a little kid. In elementary school, we learned Chinese letters.
But not the language.
But not the language, exactly.
That's fascinating.
Interesting, yeah.
Angela, when you, I'm sure you always do, listen or watch Korean dramas and series, which is, really hot right now. Everybody does that. Everybody's looking, Korean soap operas.
Mm-hmm.
Do you see the similarity, or do you hear the similarity between the Korean language and the Chinese language?
There are a few words that sound very similar, like Korean words and Chinese words, and I think they might also have the same meaning behind that.
But it's not enough to understand Korean.
Not enough to understand the context, no.
Yeah. And most of the Korean dramas, are they synchronized, are they dubbed, or are they with subtitles?
Well, the ones that I've watched are mostly with subtitles.
And in a cultural context, if we want to sort of like see how is Korea in a cultural context situated with China or in Asia as a whole, because when I was traveling to China, everybody goes to the Korean food, everybody likes Korean soap operas, K-pop, certain, Korean mascots and so on and so forth. I had the feeling that Korea is a little bit like the Italy of Asia. Is this a fair assumption?
I think Korea has a lot of cultural elements which is really popular around the globe, such as food or entertainment, but recently also the cosmetics. Well, the Korea is drawing the whole world's attention to it in this regard. So if you look at, for example, the entertainment business, the K-pop, and also much more popular, the KDrama business, I think it started in the earlier 90s, that also the China has started adopting Korean dramas to their national television partly, and also in all other Asian countries.
How does that work? I mean, isn't the day-to-day life in Korea dramatically different from Chinese daily life?
I think one of the main reasons why Korean dramas has gained so much popularity in China is because of the fundamental principles lying behind the Korean population. For example, respecting the elders, the family being the main aspect of life is not that much different from China.
Okay, but completely different from the US or European dramas.
Yeah, completely. Because as for the Western dramas, they deal much more with controversial topics as well, while the Korean dramas, in the earlier stages at least, they were really dealing with traditional topics.
Family and...
Exactly, so the daily life.
Do you have in Korea, do you have US dramas and series like 2.5 Men?
Yeah, of course.
Okay, so you have that. Same in China, you have 2.5 Men, and you know this like really stupid US series in China.
Yeah, we do have that as well. Well, not all series, but the known ones.
All right. So the Korean ones is something which is sort of like hits more close to home and has more of the Asian values, and that's where the popularity comes from.
At least from my point of view.
So yeah, we are not experts here on Korean dramas. But, you know, diving deeper into, stuff where we are not experts at, just because it's really interesting, is it the same with K-pop? Because, you know, K-pop for me is just really, really strange. You have, you know, very young people all dancing in synchronous and skimpy clothing. That's not, for me, that's not very family friendly, or am I, you know, too old for that?
Well, K-pop is a little bit different story. I think I'm not really sure where this popularity comes from.
We are maybe all too old for that already. Huh?
Yeah, maybe. But I think the Korean K-pop groups all being idolized and also showing the ideal beauty perspective is one of the main reasons. And they have expanded to the US and the European market very early. There are lots of groups who mainly were active outside of Korea as well. So I think that's where the popularity came from.
Yeah, fascinating. So we must leave now this this area where we are definitely not experts, but which is still very interesting in the context, because what we as Europeans often don't realize how diverse, how different the Asian countries are. We have Japan, which, you know, where we have law firms which very much go after a Western model, but still also very traditional. We have Korea. Korean law firms also work a little bit after the US model. Is this also a fair thing to say?
I'm not really sure about that, because I think they're really traditional based firms, but I think one cannot deny the American influence in Korea as well, and also the US being one of the biggest business partners for South Korea, and also they're expanding to the European market. So I think they're adopting their cultures and situations.
Is the firm culture also similar? So how would, you know, in a Korean law firm, how would people talk to each other? Are they on a very informal basis, or are they like in China where you address the lawyer as lawyer Liu, or senior associate Liu, or partner Liu, or managing partner Liu? What I learned is that you have to really address the different hierarchies with their position.
Yeah, exactly.
That's how it is in Chinese. How does that work in Korea?
It's the same in Korea. So your title, your position is one of the main key aspects when addressing people. So you need to be really careful of that.
So when you go through the hall, you say like, "Oh, yeah, partner Mikosch, how are you?"
Yeah.
Or would you say like equity partner Mikosch, how are you? And then, you know, say a contract partner or counsel. I mean, how fine-tuned is that?
Well, basically, if you introduce, for example, a managing partner to someone else, you would tell them there's a managing partner. But in the daily context, you would just say he's the partner.
Okay.
Mikosch.
Okay, but foreigners are not expected to adhere to that. So foreigners would say like, "Hey, Sang, how is it going?"
Yeah, so in the daily conversation, they don't do that much. You can see that, for example, in emails, they just address their names,
Okay.
not that any titles or the last names. The Western communication culture is somehow established in the written form or in an exchange with foreigners. But I think within the Korean community and within the Korean culture, they still have this strict hierarchy.
And I guess it's the same in China, because what we learned is that it really makes a difference if you are a lawyer, partner, managing partner. That's the most important thing.
Yeah, I would say it is not so different in the Chinese workspace. So you would address according to ranking and hierarchy. For example, you have the surname first and then the title of this person. But I think on the same ranking, you would go for a more informal basis, like the first name of the people.
So it's the first name if you're sort of like on equal terms. Is this changing in your opinion, or is this getting more relaxed, or is this still very much ingrained in the culture?
I think if you're within your team in the office, you still can see this hierarchy through the different addressing forms. But when communicating outside with your team, it's getting more informal, like on the first name basis.
I mean, same in Europe, same in Austria. We have different countries where there are different degrees of showing the hierarchy in addressing someone, but all this is going into a more and more relaxed pace. I think we see this development all over the world, but it's interesting to see how this is also still very much ingrained in Asia, and how the naming conventions actually start to make a difference, and how everybody is more and more choosing westernized names. To a certain degree, we are not choosing Chinese or Korean names. But at least, for all of you who are listening, you should know that Theiss actually has a Chinese name. And we have also Chinese marketing material if you want to do that. And Sanghwa, we are working on the same thing for Korean as well. So that's don't expect too much. It's just a few pages, but at least that shows that we can move also in different cultures with different naming conventions, and it shows an effort. We don't want to invest too much in it because we are a Western firm. We don't want to be seen as, so to say, trying too hard. So I'm afraid we will not name ourselves the smell of 1,000 flowers, which just sounds odd to us. So we will stick with Theiss as our Chinese name, and we stick with Theiss as our Korean name. Yeah,
exactly.
So that's what we do. So I think we are already at the end of our podcast. Many thanks to Angela, to Sanghwa. And if you find these topics interested, drop us a comment, tell us what else is interesting, and we can sure make a follow-up episode.
Thank you for joining us for today's episode of Theiss Soundshot. For more information, you can contact us via email at soundshot@wolfteiss.com or visit our website at www.wolfteiss.com.